Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar From Research to Practice, Planning Inclusive Supports for Students with Intellectual Disabilities. I'm your host, Kathy McDonald, Assistant Director for the Florida College Access Network. I am thrilled to welcome on our webinar today Janice Seabrooks Blackmore, who is a professor of special education with the Florida Center for Unique Abilities. Janice received her PhD from Florida State University in special education with specializations in community transition and specific learning disabilities. Her primary area of interest is the transition of youth with disabilities to post-school settings, particularly post-secondary education. Janice has more than 39 years of experience in education working with individuals with a variety of disabilities and preparing professional educators. Her passion for equitable access and self-determination drives much of her work in instructional strategies and collaborations that support empowering others to attain their goals. She has extensive experience working closely with diverse groups of students, families, and colleagues in public schools and institutions of higher education on issues related to equal access to resources and opportunities, and the empowerment of voice for all individuals, particularly those with disabilities. Next up, I'm also excited to welcome W. Drew Andrews, who's the Assistant Director and Technical Assistance Coordinator at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities at the University of Central Florida. Drew received his undergraduate and master's degree from the University of North Florida and his specialist and Doctor of Education from the University of Florida. Drew has taught elementary, middle, and high school students with disabilities and developed transition programs for students ages 18 to 22. At the University of Florida, he served as the project director for the State Career Development and Transition Discretionary Project on Transition. Prior to joining the University of Central Florida, Dr. Andrews has served as a transition coordinator and director of special education and student services. Finally, please join me in welcoming Iris Neal, who is the Program Manager and Outreach Coordinator for the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities at UCF. Iris's career in special education has encompassed various roles throughout Florida. Prior to joining UCF, Iris was the program planner for secondary curriculum and transition services in the Palm Beach County School District Exceptional Student Education Department. In this role, she implemented high school programs to increase graduation, employment, and post-secondary education outcomes for students with disabilities. She also initiated collaboration with local universities and served on multiple state committees to help in the development of inclusive college programs for students with cognitive disabilities in Florida. She's actively involved in the Florida Council for Exceptional Children's Division of Career Development and Transition as a board member. Her overall focus has always been to help students with disabilities become as independent as possible. Now, before we get started, a few housekeeping items. First, we welcome your questions. This is all about us learning together, so please submit your questions in the box, which you should find in your dashboard on your, which should be on the right side of your screen if you're viewing from a desktop computer. Second, we would love it if you would share what you're learning on social media. We're always excited to know what's resonating with you. You can find us on Twitter at FL College Access. Please use the hashtag FCAN and the hashtag FloridaPEPI, P-E-P-P-I, so we can find you. Finally, all materials will be available within a week of this webinar. We are recording today's webinar, so you will be able to listen to the playback, and the handouts are in the dashboard. If you're able to download them, if you're not, no worries, we'll send those out after the session as well. Now, for those of you who are new to FCAN, our mission is to lead the collaborative movement to ensure every Floridian achieves an education beyond high school and a rewarding career. Our vision is to build a Florida working together where education is the pathway to economic mobility for all. We do our work in three primary ways. First, as a clearinghouse for publishing research and data on evidence-based practices and policy opportunities to strengthen Florida's talent pool. Second is through our local college access networks, which are cross-sector coalitions of leaders who are looking to remove barriers to success. They currently represent and support 82% of the state's population. And the third way is through our College Ready Florida initiatives. FCAN leads 4 initiatives that help support students in continuing their education after high school. Our work is guided by our 7 conditions for success, which you can find out more about on our website. Today's webinar provides a great example of many of these conditions, particularly opportunity for everyone, clear information and guidance, and multiple pathways to success. And with that, enough about us. We would love to find out who's on our webinar today. So let me go ahead and launch that poll. If you could let us know if you're calling in from a college or university, a school district or technical college, a chamber, workforce or economic development organization, or philanthropic or nonprofit. So if you can go ahead and vote, let us know. That way we know who we're speaking with today. Give that a couple more seconds. Thanks to all of you who have voted so far. Okay, let me go ahead and close that out, share with you all. So as you can see, the vast majority, nearly 60% of you are calling in today from a college and university, a smaller percent, 18% from a school district or technical college, and then other. For you other folks, if you're willing to share where you're calling in from, we'd love to hear that too, and you can put that in the question box so we know who's on the call with us today. And with that, I would love to turn it over to our guest presenters. Let me change presenters here. Drew, I'm changing that over to you. So
Okay.
you should, whoops, there we go. Okay, you should be able to share your screen with everyone. And with that, I'm so excited to welcome you and your team to today's webinar. The floor is yours, Drew.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, FCAN, for this wonderful opportunity to be able to share more information about the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities at the University of Central Florida and the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program Act and what that act means to folks throughout Florida. So the title of our presentation today is From Research to Practice, Planning Inclusive Supports for Students with Intellectual Disabilities. And everything that we'll be talking about today and everything that's associated with the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities and Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs focuses on post-secondary and focuses on students with intellectual disabilities having opportunities to access higher education at state colleges, universities, career technical centers, and not-for-profit colleges and universities in Florida. So along with me today, as she said earlier, will be Dr. Seabrooks Blackmore, and Iris Neal will also be presenting. So let's get started. In today's agenda, I'm going to be giving an overview of the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program Act, often referenced as FPCTP, and the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, also known as FCSUA. We're also going to be sharing our strategic planning model and our planning tool that can help folks who are interested in creating an FPCTP. We're going to be telling about the resources and supports that we can provide along the process. And also we're going to have some time at the end for your questions. So in January 2016, the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program Act was passed. Andy Gardner was the president of the Senate at that time and was truly a champion for this legislation. And the legislation became effective July 1st, 2016. Now that act has 4 major components. The first is that it established the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities at the University of Central Florida. The second, it established Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs. It is very well written legislation, and it gave a great outline of what a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program should really look like and contain. Even better than establishing a framework for programs, there was also funds set aside for student scholarships so that students with intellectual disabilities could attend approved programs. And then the icing on the cake, funds were set aside for startup and enhancement grants for anyone interested in developing a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program. So it's the center, the programs, the scholarships, and the grants. Those are the four major components in the Act. So at the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities, we were given the charge to make it happen. And I've been with the center since almost since the beginning, but the center was actually already up and running whenever I came on board as the technical assistance coordinator. But what we were asked to do first was to create an application, submission, and approval process for becoming a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program. We also administer the development and enhancement grants. We award the scholarships to eligible students, and we collect, analyze, and report evaluation information regarding programs and student outcomes. And we just on October 1st, last week, completed our fourth end of year report, and that is available on our website under About Us. And there is a report for 2016, 17, 18, 19, and I guess this was our fifth one, so 20. So the 2020 report is there if you'd like to know more. And there's really a lot of great information and details about programs, about the credentials that they offer, about the number of hours that staff spend with programs, the breakdown on the number of staff, the number of students, the credentials that students are working towards, just lots of great information that we just don't have time to go into today. So some of the things that we provide assistance to prepare an FPCTP application and also a grant proposal. And those are two separate things. You can create an application and a grant proposal at the same time if you would like funding to be able to develop and establish your program. We also help you with the process of requesting FPCTP scholarships, and all students with intellectual disabilities that are enrolled in a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program are eligible for a scholarship, an annual scholarship every year. We also assist to design the evaluation plans and to collect and analyze evaluation data so as you monitor what you're doing and how things are going. One of the requirements is that programs within the first year of becoming a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program, that they complete the federal Comprehensive Transition and Post-Secondary, which is known as a CTP program application, and submit that. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but what that does is it opens up so that students have access to Title IV and those financial aid dollars that other students have access to. We also provide a lot of feedback to the state legislators regarding funding and policy needs. And as we know, for students with intellectual disabilities, several years ago, we saw students were just having access to be on campus with their age-appropriate peers, but this is truly a program that is established on the university, college, or career tech campus where students earn a meaningful credential. That's what a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program is, and those are the requirements. So let's talk about just a minute about eligibility. So the institutions can either be public or private. IHEs, institutions of higher education that are not for profit, but that are accredited, universities, state and community colleges, career tech centers, private colleges. And I'm going to go through a list of all of those that are currently approved programs in a slide that's coming up very soon. What about student eligibility? The students must be a student with an intellectual disability. They must attend in person and have a documented disability. The requirements for that documented disability and the determination is up to the institution. And many students come in with an IEP, others come in with a psychological evaluation that they have from a doctor, but they must be a student with intellectual disabilities as the federal definition defines that. Students must also have exited the K-12 system. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with the TIPSID, Transition to Post-Secondary for Students with Intellectual Disabilities federal grant that has been very active here in the state for several years. And that initiative included students who were dual enrollment students who were still in the K-12 system. Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition programs are only for students who have exited the K-12 system. So here's some information on those scholarships that are available to eligible students to attend approved FPCTPs and the number of scholarships that we have awarded from 2016, 2017, 18, and this current year past year of 1920. And those were $7,000. If you have a 2-semester program, the scholarship is broken into 2 payments for each semester. If you have a 3-semester program, it's divided based on your program, but students receive the full $7,000 scholarship annually. I think that's pretty awesome that there's that kind of support for students. The Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program grants, there is an annual budget of up to $300,000 per year per institution. You can spread the project period from 1 to 3 years. That's your decision. So the maximum award is $900,000 for a 3-year award. And of course, we want to make sure that that's appropriate for the number of students that you're serving and for the programs that you are developing. But there is a maximum award of up to $900,000 for a 3-year award. That can be to either start a new program or to extend, expand, or improve an existing program. And I know that there are lots of programs around the state that have been working and developing programs that were programs designed to include students with intellectual disabilities. So we've had many folks that started perhaps as a TIPSID project and then became a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program. We also have many folks that are just starting new, and we provide a very strong network among the programs for you to be able to learn from others' successes. Technical colleges, which are usually associated with a school district, are considered one institution, so multiple tech colleges within a district can each offer an FPCTP and access grant resources. For state colleges that have multiple campuses, they are considered one institution, so that that grant and the program can be spread over multiple campuses, and you'll see an example of that in an upcoming slide. So I was just talking about the FPCTP grants, and now I'm going to talk on this slide about the FPCTP program approval, because there is an approval process to become an official FPCTP. The initial approval is for 3 years. After that, there's renewal approval for 5 years, and it's a 5-year cycle after that. Now, the application includes, and these are just a few of the major areas: recruiting, assessing, and advising students, the credentials that you plan to offer, the curriculum that you plan to use and the scope of that curriculum, and also partnerships that you'll have with other maybe community agencies to be able to strengthen your program. So here's the approval process. Universities submit their FPCTP program application to the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. It is reviewed. If it doesn't meet all of the requirements, we work with you so that you have an application that we feel will meet state approval. And so we work with you through that process. So you can send us a draft and we'll give you feedback on that draft until you have your program developed where it meets all of the requirements. And then it's sent to the Florida Board of Governors for approval. State colleges, it also comes to the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities for approval by the executive director. And then it moves on to the Florida Department of Education and the appropriate area within the department that oversees state colleges. For career tech centers or technical colleges, as most of the career tech centers are known now, the application comes to the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities. We work with you to finalize that process, and then it goes on to the chancellor at the Florida Department of Education with career, technical, and adult education. So to really just give you a brief description of Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs and some of the most important components, they focus on employment outcomes. That is our ultimate goal, that we're working towards students having better employment outcomes whenever they complete a program and join the workforce. They are inclusive in context. That doesn't mean that there may not be a couple of times whenever just students from the FPCTP are together for specific instruction in some area where they need additional supports. But in an inclusive context means that students are working alongside other students in courses, in programs, to be able to achieve the meaningful credential. Students must participate no less than half-time enrollment. Based on if your enrollment full-time is considered 12 hours, then that means students in the FPCTP must at least be enrolled for 6 hours, but there's nothing holding them back from being enrolled for a full 12 hours. And that may include courses that they're taking, along with other things that are happening with the student to help them achieve their goals. There's a meaningful credential or industry certification must be associated with the programs. When students leave, students must leave with a credential that's meaningful to employers in the area and that will be meaningful whenever they apply for work. We also encourage that students have work experience while in the program. So many programs have job coaches that work with students, and lots of a very strong employment focus for students as they're working towards those meaningful credentials and industry certification. And FPCTP also requires the definition of satisfactory academic progress. And so students must be meeting the guidelines that have been established for a student to continue. And we have a strong percentage rate of students that are meeting satisfactory academic progress every year. And as I mentioned earlier, it also requires federal comprehensive transition and post-secondary, the CTP program application, so that students can access financial aid through your financial aid office. So that means they would be receiving a scholarship from us along with other financial aid. So here are some of our programs, and it's really exciting to see that we have programs in many areas of the state, but we've got a long way to go. There are 120 eligible institutions in the state of Florida that can start a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program. And these are some of the leaders that have started and have been on. Florida Atlantic University was one of our first programs. So they started on their Jupiter campus and now have expanded to their main campus in Boca Raton. The University of Central Florida in Orlando, one of our original programs. Southeastern University in Lakeland, and you may be thinking that's a private. You're right, that's a private, not-for-profit, religiously affiliated university, but they are eligible to develop FPCTPs, and so we have one at Southeastern in Lakeland. Florida International University in Miami has just recently come on board. They don't have, well, they do have students in the program, but they have just recently been approved. Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers does not have students in their program yet. They're in the development stages, as well as the University of South Florida, the St. Petersburg campus. On to our state colleges. The College of the Florida Keys initially started their program in Key West and is moving to their campus in the Upper Keys. Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Indian River State College in Fort Pierce, and they're moving to the Muller campus in Vero, expanding their program. St. Petersburg College in St. Petersburg. Tallahassee Community College in Tallahassee, as well as Broward College. And as you see there, when we were talking earlier about the state colleges and their campuses, Broward College hasn't started enrolling students yet. They're still in the development stage. And we do allow for a development period for folks to get everything in place for students. And so they're going to have programs on their north and south campuses at Broward College. On to our technical colleges. Miami-Dade County Public Schools at Robert Morgan Educational Center and Technical College has a program. Broward County Public Schools at both McFadder and Sheridan Technical Colleges. Lee County Public Schools at Fort Myers and Cape Coral Technical Colleges. Orange Technical College on the west side in Winter Garden. And recently, Leon County Public Schools, Lively Technical College in Tallahassee. And for those of you who may be familiar with, and you're seeing Lively Technical College sits right next door to Tallahassee Community College. Each of them have a Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program. They're focused on different areas and are meeting different student needs. And so it gives students in Tallahassee two options for Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs. And for those of you that are in special education or have certainly worked with students with disabilities, it's always great when there are options, because many years ago there were limited options, but it's exciting to see so many post-secondary opportunities, and we certainly would love to see more in a wider area of the state. So I mentioned earlier about the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program credentials, and students must exit with a meaningful credential. And those range from institution to institution. And again, our end of the year report gives you a complete breakdown on all of the credentials that are offered, and that may be from a very narrow focus to a very wide focus. It depends on where the strengths are at your institution and where you would like to start. Most programs start relatively small, and once they have their feet on the ground, really start growing and even expanding more to more credentials and more opportunities for students. Some are specialized credentials that were created specifically for students in the Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Program, for instance, like the credentials that are offered at Florida Atlantic University. Others provide a pathway to many credentials, like the College of the Florida Keys, where students come together and after the first semester and earning the, I'm trying to think of the name right now, of the College of the Florida Keys program, and it's escaping me, but students come together for one semester and then that's a pathway onto many of the credentials that are offered there. And others are the same as available to any other student, such as at Fort Myers Technical College and Cape Coral Technical College. So I hope I've kind of given you a good overview of Florida Post-Secondary Comprehensive Transition Programs, the grants that are available, the scholarships that are available. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our executive director, and she's going to talk to you a little more about how the Florida Center for Students with Unique Abilities can help you.
Okay, hi, thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. This is Janice, and Drew, you're right. You gave a great foundation for letting everybody know about all of our work, how we're actually implementing the work. So we want to talk now about how that actually manifests in the way that we work through with each one of our institutions. And Drew, you were trying to think about the initial credential. I want to mention Project Access Certificate of Completion. That is the National Retail Federation Customer Service and Sales Certification that
Thank
you
you,
wanted to
Jan.
share with everyone. That's okay. That's
Thank you.
definitely okay. So you have a lot to remember, so I appreciate that. When we think about all of that Drew shared with you, and how does the FCSUA help you get there? All of those programs that we have, and with our goal in looking at how do we get to serving more institutions. We provide a lot of resources. Drew mentioned throughout the technical assistance that we provide when working with institutions or maybe even school districts that will like a relationship with an institution to develop a program, and understanding our application process, making sure you understand the guidelines of the law, and meeting with colleagues across your institution or within the community. We provide support in explaining how this act works and the work of the center. As he mentioned also, we provide assistance in completing your applications for approval, completing your grant proposals for approval. So we work with you in each one of those steps and help carrying out the act. Another resource that we provide, we have monthly webinars. We just had one this week, yesterday, and we'll have one each Monday. Each month, usually the first Tuesday of each month at 3 o'clock. And it is posted on our website. We have additional webinars as well, different informational webinars, and we also post that out on our social media and our websites. Also, in helping institutions become approved programs, we start off with a strategic planning tool, which I'll get into in a minute. And we use that tool as the foundation for helping programs move forward. And each year we have 2 institutes that we implement, one in June at mid-year, and then one in November that we call our annual institute, where we work with all of the approved programs and those who are interested in becoming one, and cover information that they may have shared with us over the year that we believe to help strengthen them and to help spread the word to encourage more institutions to seek out the approval process. To assist in program development, our approach is based on more than 12 years of work from the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, formerly known as the National Secondary Transition Technical Assistance Center's capacity building model, where they worked with state leadership to improve transition for students with disabilities in K through 12 to post-school options. So we use that as our foundation for working within Florida. And that work that they've done for more than 12 years extends research to practice. And we'll talk a little bit about that in looking at evidence-based and promising practices that we now fold into post-secondary education with program planning. The strategic planning, that format that we use, it informs development, It also informs implementation and evaluation. It's a strategic planning system that informs technical assistance and professional development needs as well as programs look at what they need and what they how they would like to get there. Our approach really is twofold, with two big overarching twofold. The strategic planning system is one way, as I mentioned earlier, and we'll look at a little bit, and the application of the logic model for planning and evaluation. So we use a combination of both in getting programs to develop and enhance as they move forward each year. Go ahead. As I mentioned, we have a logic model. And with our logic model, you see the two overarching things really address what your planned work is and then what your intended results are. And when you're thinking about your planned work, you're thinking about strengths, needs. What do you need in order to, or what do you currently have in order to move forward and develop an inclusive post-secondary program? When you think about your strengths and needs, which we call our resources and input, how will you actually implement some of that? What are some evidence-based activities, evidence-based practices that are out there that you will use and incorporate in your program to actually have an inclusive post-secondary education program? And of course, as you think about how you use those evidence-based and promising practices, you think about what will that lead to? What difference does it make? You're thinking about the products that you want, outputs that come from that, credentials, what kind of policies you want to have in place. Additionally, how do you want to impact behaviors or the types of skills you want your students to have, or you would like your staff to have, or faculty to have. In addition, you look at, with all of that together, we always look at what is the impact of the work from the planning to the results to the end, to actually impact our students and our institutions, as well as the colleagues with whom we work. Our institution model is a continuous improvement model, and it's definitely data-based decision making. It's driven in that way. It is a cycle of plan, act, and evaluate. Each year, a plan based on data is developed, and we have various different collection methods, data collection methods that we use. With that, you're looking at what is your data? What are the practices that you would consider? But what kind of data do you have available? What's the quality of that data? And how will you use that to actually implement some of the practices that we know that are out there that make for a wholesome, inclusive program that leads to meaningful credentials that are recognized by employers so that our students can be hired? Well, once you've planned and looked at all of the approaches that you might take, it is important to go back and figure out how we're going to execute that. How do you execute it? How did it get executed? And then what ways do we look at how we might improve that data? So we're always taking a look at the data and execute the plan, collect data during the process to determine how you need to improve and consider other evaluation components for continuous improvement. On around to using that data, of course, to improve outcomes, identifying what worked, what didn't work, and then getting a team. And we really emphasize really interdisciplinary team to revisit your data, look at the evidence that you have, look at the current practices, and make a decision about whether or not that is all of what you've done is the way you want to continue to go, and or what other areas you need to tweak in keeping your program a nice, wholesome, inclusive post-secondary education program. When we start thinking about this part, Iris is going to share the part about our institutes and how we actually go about adding that component in supporting our programs to become post-secondary institutions, approved programs. Iris?
Thank you, Janice. As we mentioned, as Janice mentioned, we have 2 institutes where teams can set aside time to network and to learn more about the current resources and strategies for creating and enhancing the comprehensive transition program. And the institute is set up as a team-focused event, and team members can include your faculty and administrators at the institution. They can include school district staff, maybe from the career tech department, maybe from the exceptional education department. Just depends. Agencies such as vocational rehabilitation, the Agency for Persons with Disabilities, Career Source, can include your family partners and business partners. The Institute is for all IHEs who have programs already established and those that are interested in learning how to set up a program. The purpose of the Institute is just to increase understanding of resources available for and to facilitate planning and implementation of the transition programs for students with intellectual disabilities in all types of settings. Our institutes include time to learn, to network, and to plan. We embed collaboration and time to process information. The keynote sessions with post-secondary education leaders and breakout content sessions and facilitated planning time provide opportunities for you to meet one-on-one with national and state content experts and networking with colleagues from across the state. Each institute includes time to learn and time to process the information and plan. This time, you have time to ask for supports in using the strategic planning tool, which Janice will be discussing later. During the content sessions, I think I'm a little bit further along than the slides. During the content sessions, they're planned based on feedback from the Institute's annual reports and reflections from monthly webinars. These are evidence-based content and strategies around targeted areas of inclusive post-secondary education and capacity building. As I mentioned earlier, the facilitated planning time is scheduled at the time that is convenient for the institutes this year, but typically it's embedded in the time of the conference when it's a live event. You can move on to the next slide. And we just talked about the content sessions. These are all evidence-based. It includes keynotes, and this year our keynote is Senator Gardner and his wife discussing how they see post-secondary education for students with intellectual disabilities moving forward. Our content sessions include topics that are hot topics right now, including social diversity and our situation with the pandemic and how to implement these programs within the pandemic. We provide guidance, and we have our experts from other areas, such as from Western Michigan University, from Think College, and from local state and board education departments. The facilitated planning time allows teams to access current strengths and needs, as Janice had talked about, and this allows time to plan for the future. And teams have 6 hours of planning time embedded in the conference. We have identified facilitators who have experience with development of programs in the different institutes and are familiar with using the planning tool. And our facilitators are provided training and supports from us during and before the institute so that they can answer comfortably the questions that are coming up from the teams. Next slide. We invite content experts from different areas, such as mentioned Think College, from Florida Developmental Disability Council, from the state post-secondary education leaders. And these resources are available to provide what kind of services they can offer to Florida's comprehensive transition programs. Teams can also meet with the content experts during the planning time to discuss their individual needs. And Janice is going to go a little bit into the strategic planning tool now.
Just getting my mic turned back on. Thank you, Iris. Yes, a little bit. It is extensive. And when we start thinking about our system, it really represents a strong implementation of science, or implementation science through which change is planned, implemented, and evaluated. And so when we think about that, and you've heard us mention evidence-based and promising practices, in this system that I'll introduce in a minute, just and a really brief overview of it, it is designed with the current best practices in place that are in categorized, that allows institutions to go through and assess where they are in determining step by step how they will implement those practices into their actual program. When we work with our planning process and in our strategic planning tool at our institutes, it really provides a context for teams. It's a team focused effort for team discussion. And lots of times people are different with each team across the state whom are invited to join teams to really help teams advance what they're doing. And so it provides an opportunity when you can actually sit down and talk through 6 hours worth of ideas when you don't oftentimes have that. And it's designed for teams to actually leave with some concrete ideas about what they will do next. The strategic planning process guides you through topics that help you plan and develop or improve your program, considering things relevant to sustainability like funding, program services, collaboration, institutional commitment, a variety of areas that could help you move your program to be fully integrated in the institution. To foster improvement grounded in evidence-based and promising practices that we've been talking about, our program planning component applies information generated from the Taxonomy for Transition Program 2.0, which is spearheaded by Dr. Paula Kohler and other colleagues. We also included information from an extensive literature review from experts in the field, headed by Lyman Duke and other colleagues in the field. And we also referred to Think College's latest standard at the time that we were doing it. So when we start thinking about the tool in which we use for strategic planning, it includes what we've learned from our experts and brought over to, because if you recall at the beginning of the presentation, we had a K-12 model component brought over to the post-secondary education program planning tool, which is the second component of that model, which I introduced in a little bit.
So now we're opening it back up for a poll for everyone to participate. When you're planning new programs, where do you focus? Students, faculty and staff, program and institutional focused, concept and system development, or other? And again, with other, feel free to put your answer in the question box so we can get a sense of where you're thinking. Give it a couple more seconds for y'all to vote. Okay, let's go ahead and close that out. Let's share the results with you all. As you can see, student focused is where the majority of the focus starts, some with concept and system development, and then with program and institution focus. So with that, let me hide it and I'll turn it back over to Janice.
Okay. Thank you. This is the link to our strategic planning tool. And as you can see, We have two, the K-12, which is used with our states, with school districts, and then we have our post-secondary education strategic planning tool, which is what we use with our post-secondary education programs. In that component, and it is a very comprehensive component. So I'll walk you through some of the areas that we actually address. With the majority of you saying you would have a student focused, you would start with the students. We have domains, 4 domains: student focused domain, which looks at what students do we want to bring into our institution? Do we want to invite into the program? What skill sets do they need? How will we assess what they need? How will we allow them to have their voice? How will we do person-centered assessment that would really focus on student agency? How will we develop programs of study that students have told us that they want to do, and help them be determinants of how they will maneuver through our whatever our program offering? How will we engage them in work and make sure that they're getting all of the work skills in order to earn a credential? And how will we help them with accommodations? We know that at many institutions that this is an area where young adults with intellectual disabilities may not have been a huge student body. How do we think about getting our institution ready for that? The other area is faculty focused and staff, um, along with program and institution focus, and then concepts and systems. I know some of you said program and institution focus, and on that area, that domain, it has several benchmarks that look at the policies and procedures. How will the institution as a whole support the student? How will recruitment be done? How are announcements made that really recognize the credentials and the work and the inclusiveness of the students in our program? And then just a few had concepts and systems. So concepts and systems development is the other domain that looks outside of your institution and really addresses networking, working with other agencies, working with future employers in order to make sure that the students make that connection from post-secondary ed to employment. Again, the 4 domains are student focused, faculty and student focused, program and institution focused, and concept and systems development. We walk programs through each and every one of those areas. Go ahead, Drew. And they take that data to actually analyze their strengths and weaknesses and prioritizations, because they get to prioritize that. And they also look at as they end up with an actual plan, and they come back each 6 months or so in our institutes to determine how sound is this? Did we really identify goals that could be implemented? What do we need to do? Did we write a goal, or did we write activities? And so we look at the technical soundness of a really good plan, and the teams have access to reporting tools that allow them to do that. And all of the team members, whether they're in the institution or not, have an opportunity to analyze the plan, because all of them have access to the plan until we turn it off at a certain point so that we can access the plan and give some feedback. Go ahead to the next one. So when we're thinking about our post-secondary education programs, when we're thinking about our strategic planning tool and how we use that in addition to other supports to institutions who are interested in becoming approved programs, it's an organized process in which we extend research to practice. Additionally, it is a way to help us to connect the supply and demand. We are bringing in institutions or districts who are interested in establishing a program, and they are welcome right along with the approved program. We also approach it in a way to identify institutions' needs, and we address those needs throughout the year. That's how we determine our webinars in many cases and other resources, as well as content sessions at our institutes. And it's an organized approach to collect and use meaningful data. And we have that in our annual report as we look at data and thinking about how to support programs across the state. This post-secondary education program planning component is designed, as you've heard throughout, for use by all types of higher education institutions, universities, state colleges, and technical colleges. Whether you're planning an inclusive post-secondary ed program that increases, that serves students with intellectual disabilities, or just seeking to improve your services, this planning system is designed with a framework through which you use data to reflect on current practice and outcomes, identify your strengths and needs, and subsequently develop a plan to address your needs and evaluate associated outcomes. Drew? This is our next PEPI is coming up very soon, November 17th through 20th. We have registration on our website, and there's a registration link here. This is for established teams and for new teams. We'll also have in front of the actual live institute will be 1 week prior to that, we'll have pre-recorded sessions beginning on November 10th. So we welcome you to please join us. And whether you have a team already or not, we are here. Reach out to us, and we'll be happy to welcome you into the fold and to guide you through program development. This is ways in which you can contact all of us through social media, through phone calls, our websites. We welcome hearing from you. Questions? Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing your program with us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So we are running out of time, but we have one, if we can get in at least one quick question. Trina asked a great question, which is, oh, I'm not sharing my webcam, here we go. When you were talking about scholarships, you were saying that students had to be attending in person. Are there exceptions to that requirement right now due to COVID-19?
Yes, we are making adjustments. We have to make adjustments just like the institution, and we encourage our programs to follow what their institution does. And so that would be really crazy if they were going in person and no one else was there. So they are following the protocols of their institutions, and that is perfectly okay. Thank you for the question.
Great. Great. Thanks, Janice. I appreciate it. We're running out of time, so super quick, just want to let everyone know also about kind of what's coming up next for FCAN. Next week, we have Estamos Aquí, building momentum and capacity to serve the growing Latinx population in Central Florida for post-secondary success. That'll be on Thursday from 11 to 12. If you're not already a subscriber of our eBlast, I encourage you to do so. That way you'll stay up to date on any of our webinars that are coming up, policy briefs that are getting published, promising practices like what you heard today, legislative updates. So if you aren't already a subscriber, just go to floridacollegeaccess.org/subscribe. And with that, let me just extend a heartfelt thanks to Janice, Drew, and Iris for helping us understand the opportunities to support our students with unique abilities and all the resources that are available to build more inclusive campuses. Thank you so much for sharing today, and thank you to all of you for joining in. Stay safe out there, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon. Thanks for joining us.